Children learn to walk in their parents' footsteps long before they listen to their words. Unknown author. All right, welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, today is Dad Talk Day. Now, normally what I try to do is keep dad talk completely politics free and just talk dad related stuff. It can be kind of hard sometimes because there are lessons to be learned within the context of politics from a parent. And I don't mean like red or blue or which team that you're on. I mean like what what kind of lessons can we learn from things that are happening in the world that will influence our future behavior. So that's the angle that I'm going to go with today. All right. And what I'm going to try to do, we're going to keep the politics as limited as possible. We're just going to talk about the lesson that we can learn today. Now, to lead this, I just want to tell you, it's kind of fun to watch nostalgic films with your family, especially your kids. Like my wife is probably well, okay, in my case, my wife hasn't seen a lot of the films that I've grown up with. So it's kind of extra fun for me because like I'm watching something, again, kind of reliving that moment from when I first saw it, and my wife is enjoying it for the first time and my son is as well. So, because she was born and raised in Indonesia, so she didn't necessarily have access to all the films that I grew up watching. So, therefore, when she got over here, she was busy going to college and then going to work. And, so she didn't have a lot of time to go backtrack and watch all these films. That's what a family's for, right? That's what family night's for. So, fun little story. Um, my son and I decided he should watch Wizard of Oz. And the one with what's that woman's name? Judy. I can't remember her name now. But the one that's in color. I think there was an earlier one before that, like in the 1900s or something like that. And Judy Garland, the one with Judy Garland. And so it's kind of old. Even for me, it's probably a little on the older side. But as we were watching it, we were starting to watch it. If you remember the movie, it starts out in black and white, and he's like, "Dad, where's the color?" And I was like, "It'll be here in just a few moments." And we're watching, and he's like, "Dad, where's the color?" And he was like really distraught over this fact that there was no color in the film. And I was like, "The Technicolor is coming soon," And then finally the color. I don't think he particularly enjoyed that one. I mean, yeah, he watched it ish mostly, but he seemed to be more annoyed with it at the lack of color at the beginning, and then just kind of like, eh, it's a movie that Dad's watching after the fact. Then one day I tried to watch. I was like, oh, maybe he'll watch GI Joe because that's what I watched when I was a kid, and that's how us parents do. We're like, "Oh, back when I was a kid, this is what I did for fun. Why don't you try it out?" And then we're like, "How come you don't think it's fun?" Like, "I thought it was great." Like, it's like we're totally disconnected that they're not living in the same world that we lived in. Um, and so he watched it and he seemed like he was kind of interested. And man, the moment it was over, he was like, "Can I watch Minecraft?" Like there's YouTube videos of people doing Minecraft stuff. And he's like, "Can I watch Minecraft?" Like I was like, Did you like it?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to watch Minecraft now." So I don't think that one really got to him. But we watched last night Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the one with Johnny Depp. Either one is good. That one or the one with Gene Wilder, both of them are great. I figured he would probably be more interested in the one with a little bit more vibrant color, the more recent one. So we watched the one with Johnny Depp, and he was glued to the TV the whole time. So I think he really enjoyed the show. And it was a fun film. So, So then I got to thinking and I was like, all right, all right, maybe there's a lesson in here. So then I had to think about it and I was like, all right, what's that lesson? And then it hit me. There it goes. A little delay there. Like bing. I had an idea. Okay. So I'm reminded of this post that I really liked. Like, there's not too often that I see somebody's post online that I really, really like. And so let me put one up on the screen here and I'm going to read it to you. I really appreciate this. And this is where I'm going today. All right. So this is from somebody that I follow. We're mutuals. He goes by Captain and Capistan. All right. And he said, I never really took a stance on mass deportations because I understand why people want them. And they may be necessary. Not sure they are. But I was very much afraid of what kind of apparatus would need to be built up to accomplish them. But I will say this, I'm pretty grossed out by the way a lot of people on the right are celebrating them. He goes on to say, if it's a violent criminal getting deported, that's one thing. But I don't care how you feel about the immigration issue. The deportation of peaceful, productive people and children is effing tragic. Even if you think it's necessary, it's still sad. And you should discuss it in a solemn, sober manner. This person's life is being uprooted for the crime of wanting a better life. If you support mass deportations, fine, but have some humanity for some of these people getting deported. And I fully agree with this. Okay. This has been my consternation about the whole issue. Like, I've said it before, and we're not going to hash it out now. Where I stand on immigration, and I say, look, if you're a violent criminal, if you've committed property crimes, I have no issues with removing you. Me personally, I would say, hey, if your only crime is literally coming here without permission or staying longer than you were given permission to stay, you've overstayed your visa, then in that case, I'm willing to say, all right, if you've been productive, I've got some rules around this, but we can let you stay because those aren't meaningful crimes. But let's set all that aside. Let's not talk about the immigration itself, whether you agree with deportations, whether you disagree. Hey, they broke the law. Hey, this. Let's talk about Captain and Capistan's point there. And he's like, hey, it's pretty gross the way you guys are talking. And I've seen some pretty foul things. Now, you might say, well, DL, a lot of that's probably bots or Russian trolls or whatever, right? And to a degree, I will believe that. However, there are a lot of people for which some of the accounts, I know that they're a legitimate person, like a real person, like who they, like their account is associated with their name and their face. I've maybe seen them on video. Maybe in some cases I've met them personally, right? So there are people out there that I watch and I see, yes, you are a real person. You are really talking about this in this way, in a gleeful way. Like you, and look, the media, they do their thing. They show you a video of some mom and she's crying and she's like, oh, I just wanted to come here for a better life. Right. And they're doing that on purpose. Right. So I get it. And then I see people, they're like, ha ha, no tears here. Get the heck out. Rah, you don't belong here. Rah, you're brown. Right. I mean, okay, maybe they don't say the you're brown part, but it feels like it. It feels that way. With the rest of the words that they're saying, it feels very much like the attitude is, I just hate you as a person, not I need to punish you or this is the rule of law. And as sad as it may be, it has to happen, right? Like that's not the attitude that they're coming with. So let me interrupt this and go back to a story from some years ago that happened to me, not related to immigration. Okay, so hopefully you're kind of making the point here, um, or you're kind of understanding the point here. So there are a group of people called peaceful parents. It's very popular in the libertarian community. Basically, they are parents that decide, hey, we're not going to spank our kids. That doesn't mean no discipline. That just means they're not going to spank them. They don't hit their kids. That's like the biggest one. There are some other things, but that's the major point. And online, there's like a lot of debate. There's the crowd that says, hey, if you don't spank your kids, they're going to grow up to be an entitled brat. And then there's others that are like, well, if you spank your kids, you're going to squelch their personality, blah, blah, blah. You can accomplish, raising your kid to not be a spoiled brat without hitting them. Okay. So there's, these two like major crowds, if you will. And so what the peaceful parents will often do is they'll post like a link and they'll say, hey, this new study proves that if you spank your kids, it does this and this and this. And so somebody did that one time. And I decided I'd read the study because I like reading a lot. And whenever somebody presents a study or a bill or something, I read it because I'm curious. What does it actually say? And is the person that's presenting it to me, have they understood it accurately? Right? Like as I would from reading it. And I found in a lot of cases that's not so. Like even media, like, that's what got me started. One day from media, they had presented something. They said, "Here's a new study that says this," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I was like, and I was totally curious. I wasn't even disputing. I was just like, "Oh, let me check it out." Like I'm curious. I want to read that. I want to read more about what they had to say. So I read it, and in that particular instance, toward the end, in like the discussion portion of the study, it said this study should not be taken to mean this, and I was like, wait a minute. That's literally what the media said. The media said this study proves this, and the study itself was like, this study should not mean to say this. And I was like, wow, you like clearly didn't read it. You read maybe the abstract portion of it, and then you went from there, or you read the whole thing and disregarded the own authors telling you not to make that point, and you made it anyway. So that taught me that I needed to start doing a lot more reading. And so somebody presented this study and they were like, this study proves that if you spank your children, it does this and this and this. And I can't remember what the claim was. So I was curious and I read the study. It didn't take long. It was only like, I don't know, maybe 20 pages. This particular one, it was very short. And so I came back and I was like, well, that's not what the study says at all, actually. I did it. I did the meme. I did the, "Well, actually," I totally did that. Hey, like, if you put it out there, like, that's the whole point of debating, right? To sift through the information and figure things out. So, this person, gave me a hard time. They're like, "Oh, you're a terrible dad, blah, blah." It was like, they just kind of, and then they jumped into Messenger. This was on Facebook. Then they jumped into Messenger, and they cussed me out. They were like, "You're effing this, blah, blah, blah." All I said was, "Your study does not prove what you say it proves." That's it. The way they responded to me in Messenger, you would have thought that I was like, "Oh, you think spanking is bad? I'm gonna go spank my kid right now just to show you." That's what it seemed like. Like, because they were cussing and carrying me out, and I was like, and then it dawned on me, I was like, "Wait a minute. Well, I disagreed with you respectfully. Then you jumped in my messenger, jumped on Messenger on Facebook, and then you cussed me out because I disagreed with what a study said. And you're telling me you're a peaceful parent because I don't see any peacefulness here at all. And so then I went along this, I started developing this attitude. I was like, if you claim to be a peaceful parent and you engage with adults in a really crappy way, if you're a jerk, and I don't mean like somebody's being a jerk and you come in with a hammer to make a point. I'm talking about unprovoked, you're just being a jerk or you're going very excessive. You know what I'm talking about, where somebody is clearly out of bounds, right? For whatever reason. Maybe it was started out fine, but then they took it too far. Maybe they took it too far from the very beginning, whatever the case. If that's you, then I don't want to hear you tell me about peaceful parenting because I have to think, I'm like, okay, which is more difficult? Because I'm a dad now, so I know this stuff. Which is more difficult to deal with, adults or children? Well, it depends. But in many cases, it can be children. Because if you've ever had a toddler and you go out like to the restaurant and they decide that they don't want to do something or that they want to do something, like you don't have, like you have only your toolbox to deal with that is very, very light. There's not a whole lot of options that you have. And once they break down, if they have a meltdown, over. It's over. You don't get to rationalize with them. Like I've been in arguments with my wife, my ex-wife, other friends, and there's been points where we're like, all right, look, let's take this down a notch. Let's take a breath. Let's come back to this. And we can both be like, yeah, you're right. Let's come back. You don't get that with a child. You do not. You if your child is having a breakdown, they're having a meltdown, and then you're like, all right, little Johnny, let's take a breath and we're gonna come back and talk about this in 5 minutes. No, he's not listening. He's gonna just keep going. Right. So to me, if you can handle a child, then you should easily be able to handle an adult in most cases. Now, there are some adults where maybe they are, petulant and they're acting like a little child themselves. There are them situations. But I'm saying in general. And in this particular case, I think this would have been one of them because I literally just said, that's not what your study says. Right. Sorry. Hate to break the news to you, but I read it. It's not what it says. And I wasn't rude. I didn't use any profanity. I didn't, say, oh, you're a dumb idiot. I didn't use any insults of any kind. I literally just said, that's not what it says. You should read the study. I think I did say that much. Right. Did I strike a nerve? Potentially. But was it like, did I come in with this high level of aggression that would have warranted that response? Absolutely not. And so for me, I got, then so now to bring this back to what we're talking about today. And if you think about the quote at the very beginning of the show, children learn to walk in their parents' footsteps long before they listen to their words. So I can tell everybody I'm a peaceful parent. And then if I act like a jerk to other people, my kid's going to pick up on that. And they're going to be like, okay, well, my kid might learn, okay, well, dad doesn't talk to me like that, but it's okay to talk to other people like that. So they might learn the lesson. Don't talk to daddy like that, but talk to your friends that way. Talk trash to them. Be rude. Maybe even use some profanities, right? That's how, and we all know this is true, but there's no argument there. We know that kids watch us. This is why every parent has to be careful what they say. You're talking about that one family that you don't particularly like, and you want to be like, yeah, that guy's an idiot. And then what happens? You think your child's not watching, and what happens? What do they do? Out of nowhere, they're like, hey, daddy, that's the guy you said was an idiot. And you're like, well, no, okay, that's not really what I meant, son. And then you're trying to play damage control, right? That's because children learn by observation. They learn by watching what you do. So let's go back to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There are 5 kids in there, right? If it's been a while, you have Augustus Gloop. That was the kid that was all about gluttony. He was like the German kid, and he was like always eating chocolate. He's like really fat, and he's like, "Well, I love this chocolate. I want some more chocolate," right? And then you had Veruca Salt. She was the entitled rich brat, and she had the dad that was like super wealthy, had his own, big huge nut business, and she got whatever she wanted. And then the way, and it wasn't like daddy's little girl gets spoiled in a nice, loving way. It was like daddy's little girl gets spoiled because she demands it. And she would be like, Daddy, I want this. You get it for me now. And he's like, yes, dear. And then he would go and, and get whatever she wanted. And then you had Violet Beauregard. She was the arrogant girl. She was the gum chewer. She's like, I'm a champion. That's all I do. I chew gum. And I win all these awards. And she had, like, they showed where she had like some hundreds of awards or something like that. And then you had Mike TV, who was obsessed with television and video games. And he just, like, everything that he consumed in the world around him came from, like, all of his knowledge, all of his experiences. They basically came through television or video games. And he was pretty violent as well. Like, they show him playing some violent video games, and then later he's destroying things. So like he's learning from the video games. Then you have Charlie Bucket. He's the humble poor kid, right? And he's super nice. And like when they announce that there's 5 golden tickets, the parents are like, well, maybe we'll get you a chocolate bar, and maybe you can win the prize. And he's all humble about it. And he's like, no, it's okay, whatever. And then the parents get him one anyway. And then he opens it, And then he finds out that he didn't get a golden ticket, and so then he's got both of his grandparents there and his parents. They're all living in the same tiny little shack, and he starts breaking his chocolate apart, and he's like, "I want to give a piece to each," and they're like, "No, no, 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 that's your chocolate." And he was like, "Yes, it's," and he's like, he says it so politely too. He's like, "Yes, it's my chocolate, and I'll do what I want, and I want to give you a piece." And they're like, "Okay," like he's like this crazy humble kid. So those are your 5 kids in there. Now, the question is, how did they get that way? They got that way from their parents. That's how they got there. The parents indulged in that behavior, and in some way, they probably exhibited similar behavior, right? Now, not entirely. Like you could see with Augustus Gloop, his mom was fat. So you presumably, she didn't, presuming here, she also overate as well. And so then he learned to overeat from her, but then she also allowed him to. And she's like, "Oh, he's such a nice little boy. Here, have another chocolate bar." Right. You have Veruca Salt. She's an entitled brat. She gets whatever she wants. The dad indulges in it, you know, and maybe he wasn't showing entitlement himself, but he played a role in this. Violet, her mom had won some awards, but then would kind of encourage the girl. She would be like, "Yeah, chew more gum. Yeah, do this, do this." And then Mike TV, his dad just seemed to be kind of like, "Son, I don't know why you're doing that." Right. But they weren't teaching them. They weren't teaching them actively. They weren't teaching them passively. So these kids learned these poor behaviors. Then you have Charlie Bucket and his family. Like you can watch the family. The husband comes in from a day at work, and the wife is cooking some cabbage soup again. And she asked, like, I think she asked something like, "Do we have any meat?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Ah, that's okay. I'll just add a little extra cabbage." Right? Like they're so nice to each other, and the only one that's a little bit ornery is like the old grandpa. One of the grandpas in there, and he would just be sometimes go on a tangent and just be like, "Oh, rah, 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 rah," you know. But otherwise, it was a tight knit family, and they treated each other respectfully, and they so he learns to be respectful and humble from his family. All of these kids learn their behaviors from their family. So when you're watching this immigration debate, what are you teaching your children? Yeah, you could say, "Hey, the law is the law," right? But that doesn't mean that you have to be a jerk about it. That doesn't mean you can't have a little bit of sympathy and say, "Hey, look, like, let's just work with, if you're illegal, you have to be deported. That's fine. We'll work with that for now. I disagree, but let's talk about a greater goal here. Don't you want your child to grow up and treat other people as best as possible, as often as possible, in as many situations as they possibly can?" Certainly, it won't be all of them. I have been rude to people sometimes, very much on purpose, and I don't take it back. Sometimes I do, but not always, right? Don't Isn't that what you want out of your child? Well, then why would you why would you say things, laugh at people, scoff, "Yeah, they got to get out. They're ruining our country." All this crazy stuff, right? Because your child's going to learn that. And look, I'm gonna put your back up against the wall here. There was they're called the oh, I should have remembered their. I'm drawing a blank on the names. I should have. Um, the Lynx twins. I think it's called the Lynx twins. Let me see if I can. Prussian blue. Yes. So I had to look it up for a second. So Lynx and Lamb Gade, they're fraternal twins. They were born in 1992 in Bakersfield, California. You may have heard of them. If you're old, you may have heard of them. If you're younger, you probably won't. They had a pop. They were a pop music duo, not a very popular one. They were called Prussian Blue, and they were raised by literal white supremacists. Just two little white girls, and they would sing white supremacist songs. And that's what kind of got them their popularity. And they were kind of, it's like, imagine the Olsen twins when they were little being raised as racist. That's what they were. Okay. They were raised that way. Now they were raised very actively. Okay. And so they became what their parents explicitly wanted them to become. But here's the thing, your kids can become things even if you don't want them to, just by your behavior. This is why your child will say things, thinking that it's okay to say. This is why they'll say, "Yeah, daddy, you said that dude was an idiot." Right? They don't know that this is a bad thing and they're not supposed to not supposed to talk about it out loud. They don't know that. They just know you said it, so therefore it must be okay to say. That's what they know. They're going to follow your behavior. Even if you say, "Hey, don't say bad words," right? They might say, "Oh, okay, well, sometimes it's okay to say it because daddy says it or mommy says it." And so the question is, do you want your children to treat other people like that? Because here's the thing. When let's just say that we deport all of the let's take a little let's do a what do they call that? Sometimes I think of things in the middle of the show and I can't quite grab the word that I'm looking for. Let's do a thought experiment here. So let's imagine that we get rid of all the illegal immigrants in the United States, all of them. They're all gone. Okay? You're happy now if that's where you stand. You're happy. Your kids have watched you talk trash about illegal immigrants. So what they've picked up is that there are some people for which it's okay to say mean things about. When all the illegal immigrants are gone, who do they have left to talk trash about? Probably the neighbor or somebody else. This is the nature of humanity, right? When we run out of a group to point the finger at, we find another group. This is the basis for that. First, they came for the so and so. Then they came for the so and so. Then they came for me, and there was nobody left to protect me. Right? That's the gist of that poem. Is that, hey, when you run out of people to point the finger at, to be angry with, then you find somebody else. And so, if you get the world that you want, which I don't think you will, that's an entirely different story. But if you got the world that you wanted, are your kids now going to engage with other people in a positive way, or have they picked up your behaviors and said, well, it's okay to talk about other people and their tragedy? And so, yeah, today you might laugh and scoff and be like, those tears, they're not shaking me a bit. That's just, you're an illegal immigrant. Get out. Right. Okay. So that's your attitude. You basically just now taught your child that it's okay to mock people for their tragedies, right? For things that are happening. That's not a good thing that's happening to them, right? No, it's never good when we deport somebody. Nobody's like, wow, I'm so glad I got deported, right? This is a bad thing for them, at least, right? You might see it as good, but it's a bad thing for them. And so for them, it's something that's not happening that's good. And if you're laughing about it, if you're taking this attitude where it's okay to laugh and scoff and to, give them the finger and whatever else, your child is learning to treat people poorly. You are basically one of those four parents in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Is that really what you want? Or do you want your child to be like Charlie Bucket, who was humble? Now I get it, it's a story, right? And, the elements of the story you could argue with, blah, blah, blah. But what we're trying to do here is make a point. And the point is, how you behave toward other people is how you can expect your child to behave. Now, they might not, right? They may grow up differently. Not every child grows up exactly like their parents, but they will initially learn the lessons of their parents. They will initially learn to treat people poorly. If you are saying, hey, it's okay to mock somebody for their for what's happening that's bad to them, then you've basically just told your kid you've given them a license to do so. You are like that parent who said, I'm a peaceful parent, and then went and cussed me out. No, I'm not mad at him. I was kind of shocked at the time. I was like, wow, like this came out of nowhere. Like, boy, didn't you dial that up. This, as they say on the internet, this escalated quickly. So that's just what I wanted to talk about. Like I was thinking about it, and yeah, we could have went with some other directions with the film, right? There's you could talk about innovation through freedom, the unbridled creativity. Presumably, Charlie was not Charlie, uh, uh, Willy Wonka was living in a free market that allowed him to do the things that you could talk about. Hey, he brought in the Oompa Loompas from some foreign land because he couldn't trust the workers, and so he brought in foreign. We could go that I didn't really want to go that route. And I didn't even really want to go the route of, hey, 4 out of the 5 children, technically all 5, but 4 out of the 5 children faced consequences, negative ones, for their actions. Whereas Charlie, he faced a positive consequence for his action, which was to be respectful and not, indulge in his worst behavior, whatever that might be. And so then he ended up winning the chocolate factory, right, at the end of the movie. Like, we could have talked about those, but I didn't think those were as useful as we need to model our behavior based on what we want others around us, more specifically our children, but also others, model our behavior so that other people follow. And so if you don't have children, how are you behaving and how do people know you? How do they see you? Are you somebody that they want to be like? Because here's the thing with immigration, you can be somebody that says, the law is the law. We have to deport you. I'm not going to take joy in this, but it has to be done, right? You can be that person. And then other people can see you and go, wow, this person doesn't take joy in this. But they are saying, yes, you have to face these consequences. They're just not indulging in it. The same as all those children indulged in Charlie and Chocolate Factory. So that's my show, folks. Very short today. I didn't say very short at the beginning because had I done that, then I'd still be talking for the next 30 minutes. So let's get to some comments, see what you guys are saying up there in the chat. Let's see here. All right. Oh, I clicked on the wrong button there. I mean, there we go. There we go. All right. There we go. Time Surfing Alien says, hey, I can't hang out today, but I do appreciate you coming in the chat and staying for a few moments. Cassandra said, one of my favorite movies. It is a fun movie. It really is. And in my opinion, I think, and it's a tough call, but I do think that Johnny Depp did better than Gene Wilder. I think you could separate them and say they're each great in their own right. But I'm really drawn more toward the one that Johnny Depp did. And Johnny Depp is a character actor. And I think he's just phenomenal. Just a phenomenal character actor. So I think he did a great job. Hello, Liberty Champions from My VA Lady. So let's see what else. Yes, spank the thumbs up button on the way in, folks. Do. Bum, bum, bum. The fact is, most people in law enforcement are sadistic. I don't know that I would say that so much, but I do think that people in law enforcement have been trained to think a certain way. And I'm not so confident that this way of thinking is the best. Let's put it that way. And I'm not going to try to get into the longer story, but I went and I had coffee with a cop. There was like the local sheriff's office was doing this thing where they would, like, on a monthly basis, they would go to a coffee shop and they would just have a couple officers sitting there, and they would just allow you to sit down and just chit chat with them. And so I did that, and I kind of got into a bit of a disagreement with them. It was respectful, but a bit of a disagreement with them because they were like, well, we put on our badge every day and we never know if we're coming home. And I was like, okay, well, whenever an officer pulls me over, I don't know if you're a real officer or if you're in a bad mood, if you're going to assault me, whatever, like I have concerns of my own, when you pull me over, I don't know how it's going to play out. And they were like, well, the public needs to remember that most interactions with the police, don't end up in violence by far. And I said, okay, fair enough. I said, can you remember that when you're approaching a car very aggressively. You pulled me over for, my light is out, and you come up and you're being very aggressive. And they're like, well, you just don't understand. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You just said that most interactions, you want me to believe something you're not willing to believe. Right. This kind of almost ties into what I was talking about today. Like, in some cases, you need to exhibit the behavior that you want other people to engage in. If you want people to be less aggressive during police stops, I don't know, perhaps be less aggressive yourself. But I don't know if it's quite sadistic so much as they've been trained to think a certain way. And then maybe the job, maybe that's part of the job. A certain level of thinking comes with the job over time. I don't know. But that's my thoughts on that. Let's see. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Okay, so you're saying that. Okay, so that Liberty lady said that guy might have one good take every 30 tweets. He came to my page acting like an ass because I supported Chase. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, a lot of people, Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate in the last election, a lot of people were pretty foul about him and towards people that supported him. And that's basically the same thing, right? And this is why I keep preaching this. And look, I'm going to be honest, I'm not always so pleasant myself. We all need the reminder from each other. Hey, tone it down. You need to back up a little bit. You're being a little bit unpleasant. Is that what you want other people to be like towards you? Is that what you want your son to grow up to be like? Right? That's the lesson. This is the lesson that we should all have toward each other. Let's see. Two. I have been using the actions of ICE to mock the left for supporting Biden. I mean, at the end of the day, politics is a full contact sport. So there is a little roughness out there. I just think that we need to kind of keep in mind when it's time to be a little rough and maybe when we don't need to be so rough, right? Like, if somebody's acting like a jerk, then yeah, maybe you need to swat them down. If somebody is legitimately hurting, then maybe we have a little sympathy, even if we, at the end of the day, still say, sorry, this has to happen. It's like with my kid. Sometimes, like, he'll be in a mood, and then I'll say, all right, no screen time for a while. You need to go take a nap sometimes. And then he'll start crying, and it'll be really sad. And it hurts inside because I'm all like, man, I don't want to see my kid cry. But at the end of the day, got to do what I got to do. Right. But I'm not taking joy in it. I'm not like, ha, 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 you crying little baby, get up there to you. I don't do that. I'm like, hey, we'll try again next time. Right. And then I say, but for right now, you need to go take a nap. Right. That's how I treat him, because I want him to understand that I can still have sympathy. I don't have to take joy and pleasure in his sadness. And I try not to do that with other people, even adults. Right. This is why I don't, whenever somebody famous dies, I never get on there and like, ha, 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 they're dead now. Yay. I don't do that because I'm like, no, I don't want that done to me. I don't want that done to anybody. So I try not to take joy in the unfortunate nature of somebody else's experience. Even if they're a terrible person, and people are like, well, would you be like that with Hitler? I mean, maybe. I mean, he's the extreme example. But am I going to take pleasure in it? Hope not. But I might if I'm part of the people that have been on the receiving end of him. In that case, I might. And I would be like, okay, I kind of understand it. But for most people, we're too far separated from the person that we're mocking and laughing. So therefore, we shouldn't. But again, when it comes to government officials, like, hey, I've said this before. If you are somebody that has put yourself out there to be in some sort of leadership position, you have, in a way, accepted the arrows that come your way. This podcast, if people want to criticize me and give me hell, like, that's what I signed up for. If I ran for office and I was elected, I signed up to be mocked and laughed at and criticized, even unfairly, right? So I think there's a certain level of acceptability that comes with that. But I do think that we can go too far. That's all I'm really trying to get at. Let's see. What else? Have a blessed day. Keep pushing liberty. I will. And you too. I said that awkwardly. You too, and I definitely will. All right. Let's see. Keith Garrett says, I haven't watched the Johnny Depp version. Sounds about the same. Yeah, it's pretty much the same as the Gene Wilder one. I'd have to go back and watch it to see how different they actually are. It's definitely different in tone. Um, the tone is definitely different, and the story is relatively the same. It might be exactly the same with just some different visuals and different personalities. The personalities explored a little bit differently, but otherwise it was pretty much the same. But I do think that they're uniquely different in a sense. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, folks. I think that's all of the comments that I have today. So I'm going to head on out, give you back a little bit more of your time. I will see you Sunday night if you are a Rumble Premium member. So if you have Rumble Premium, I will be streaming my Rumble Premium Sunday night. I'm going through Mom Donnie's Mom Donnie, Zoran Mom Donnie's platform, and I'm walking through every single one, and I'm talking about them from a libertarian perspective. So I'm doing that every Sunday night until I get through them all. So I will do that probably 7:30, might be 8:30, somewhere around there. All right. I'm being a little flexible because it's the weekend. Okay. But I will be doing that. But if you don't have Rumble Premium, well, then I will just see you on Monday morning with a brand new episode. And we're going to talk some more bill reviews. We're actually going to get back to doing some bill reviews. So look forward to that. Otherwise, I will see you. Have a good weekend. Have a good Friday evening. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.